I hope you're all doing well. You know, it has been a very, very stressful year, right? It's been a year of lockdowns and pandemics, and it's still carrying on in 2021. You know, and being a dad, this has a very interesting impact on my family and my two girls. As some of you may know, and if you don't, I have two beautiful girls. One is 2 years old, and the other is 5 months at the moment. And to be honest, I couldn't think of a better job than being a dad. I love it. I get to be a kid again. You know, I get to share video games and cartoons and anime and get excited and play with Legos again. Like I get to redo my childhood again. Like, who doesn't like doing that? And I find it a joy to watch them learn. And so it's been a very challenging year for our family, having the pandemic going across Canada, and especially here in Ontario, right? Ontario is one of the most populous provinces in Canada. We've had a lot of infections here. And, you know, currently it's 2021. We're right now in a stay-at-home orders lockdown. And so we've been in these lockdowns in and out for a while now here in Ontario, and it's had a dramatic impact on families. And being a dad who used to work at the university, right? I'm sure many of you remember some of this wasn't here before. In part because I used to do my work at the university. I had a lab that I'd work in. I did my research. I taught at the university. I would work there in my office at the university and do a little bit of work here at home, but anything that was important, I'd go there. And so this isn't just unique to me. There are hundreds of thousands of parents all across Canada and many millions around the world who have been forced to move from the offices and their work away from the home and now have to bring it in. And that sets a huge challenge. And being a dad who is living in a triplex, so meaning that there are three different units in this big house here, we're on the main floor, we don't have a lot of space. There's no dedicated office, right? It's a two-bedroom triplex that we're in. So there's a bedroom for my wife and I, and obviously Ellie, our youngest, our 5-month-old, is in the bedroom with us. And then my daughter, Aurora, has her own room. There's no room for an office here. And so I was working makeshift in the dining room, and that was very difficult. The dining room's just behind me. So we've actually got this wall here from IKEA to sort of put stuff on and block me and make a small little office here in the nook of our dining room so that I can say, yep, this is my office. When I'm in here, I'm working. You can't come in here. You can't bother Dad. And that's hard because when you have a young toddler who's still learning of the world and learning language and trying to understand the rules, it's difficult to all of a sudden have Dad home, but you can't see him. And I'm not the only one that has this challenge. It's many parents out there. I hear from my own family, like my sister, and colleagues of mine, especially colleagues who are like me, an entry-level career scientist, who literally lost all their research, can't do anything, and they're back at home in their office, and they can't function well. They're having a hard time focusing on work, and that happens quite a bit. I mean, when you had your work physically removed from your home life, it's easier, right? Home-work balance. You go to the office. Once you leave the office, it's done. You don't worry about it. But now your office is in your home, so it's a little bit different. I find it personally, because of the small space that we're in, it's very challenging to focus and do work. My productivity has gone down a bit. For some people, it's been the same or greater, because they don't have to worry about commute times. For me, commuting times didn't bother me. I only live like 10 minutes away from the university. So what is it? There was much of a commute time for me anyway, so I was lucky in that regard. But it's been hard. It's been challenging. The other thing about this pandemic, which is really hard for my daughter, Aurora, the 2-year-old, has been every extracurricular thing that she was in is gone. She did swimming. She did the play gyms where you go and you do like learning about rolling and learning about basic ballet moves and gymnastics techniques. She was enrolled in something called Books for Babies and Toddlers at the local library, where you'd go in and do reading activities and singing songs. It was a great time for the toddlers to hang with others and the parents to sort of coalesce among themselves and talk. We also did a lot of these little play activities, I guess you would call them, at the YMCA. There was a lot of these little activities we would do, and I used to drive them all over our city, and while they were doing that, I would read or work a little bit for the 45 minutes that these were going on for, and just work in the libraries or whatever. But then the pandemic happened, all of that stopped. You can't meet, you can't work together, you can't play like that. It just doesn't work that way anymore. And so all these programs, poof, were gone. In the short term, it was fine, right? There wasn't a big problem. But then, as it's dragging on now, we're going on to a year almost, right, of this, it's hard, right? My daughter asks, when do I get to go swimming again? When do I get to go to these things again? I miss the library, right? The library has greatly reduced hours. And none of these programs can start up, because as soon as they start up, within a couple of months, in some cases weeks, it's gone again. So there's no point in doing any of these things that's already up in the first place. So it's been very challenging. In the beginning of the pandemic, you couldn't go to parks. All the parks in our city were closed for a good several months. You weren't allowed. And if you did go, and there were people in the news here who did go, whether they either they didn't know about it or they knew about it and didn't care, they were charged. And so it's been really challenging on the girls, and that then goes over onto us as parents, because you feel bad. You're like, geez, what do you do? How do you recreate these environments and try to foster these things when many kids, you can't go and meet other kids. You don't want to mix with households. Like right now in Ontario, you are not to see anybody for the next 28 days. Well, I guess now it's 26 days. 2 days have passed since the orders came in. But my point is that it's very difficult, and it's hard to maintain that social aspect and social development in children, which are very important in the early years. That's not happening right now with my daughter. And it's sad. We do our best, and as parents, you feel bad. As a dad, I feel really bad, right? I'm stuck here, working, doing my best, and feeling guilty that my daughter is craving that social interaction and wanting to go out and go to the mall again. We used to go to the malls and used to go all over a lot. We would go to farms and pick blueberries, and none of that happened this year. We used to go to the beaches, used to visit my mom and grandmother and uncles and aunts and sister all the time. It doesn't happen anymore, right? As a very rare occasion do you do that, only if it's an emergency. And that's hard on the development for the children, and obviously for the adults as well. So we do our best, right? And as a parent, you come up with solutions. So for example, I only work in the mornings, and I try to keep my afternoons semi-clear, because it's not fair to block off this for the whole day. It's not feasible. If I have to, you do it, but it's not very feasible. So I try to keep my afternoons after 1 o'clock free, so that I can go and they can still run around, and I can still be here and play, and say, hey, you can't see Dad only for the morning, right? Makes it a little easier for them. We do a lot of Zoom calls, or a lot of Facebook Messenger. We live in an era where it's so wonderful to have Facebook and all these technologies that you can connect with anybody in the world. We're very lucky, and it keeps people still connected, and I can talk to my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles through these devices, and then my daughter can see them still. It's not the same as physically touching and being around them, but you know what? It's something. It's still having that connection. My daughter talks to my mom on the phone now all the time and just walks away and chit chats. So she's still getting that speaking to other people that are not mom and dad. It's also great that we have a little one, right? Because now there's somebody that Aurora can talk to that's going to be her own age soon, right? And have the same abilities. And Ellie's learning very quickly to be crawling, moving, and trying to catch up with her sister, her older sister. It's the way it is. And it's great because they can now work together, play together, and still have some of that important milestone social communications that are important in early years. We try to do activities. So my wife has tried to mimic the very things that they did in the books for babies, for example, like singing the songs, and I do as well. You know, dance around, look silly, go around, you know, do a jig. That's what you got to do, right? You have to do when you have kids, you know. And I put on little silly hats and costumes and try to do my best to give them that same value that they got in those classes. We do art. You know, we sit down and do the ABC stuff and go through drawings and all that stuff that they used to do at these other places. I tried making a little jungle gym. There's just not enough space here. But you know, we let them run around. You do the best you can, right? We do have a backyard. It's unfortunately it's open, meaning that there's no fencing. So my daughter, if she's not careful, and if I'm not vigilant, or my wife, she could just run off into the street. And we are on a decently busy road here, so you know, you don't want that. So it's not ideal, but once in a while we go out and do that. But other than that, go for walks. We used to go for drives, but now they're even saying not to go for drives right now because the cops sometimes will stop you and ask you, you know, what are you doing, especially if your car's full. And my car would be full. I have, you know, 2 seats in the back plus my wife and I, so there would be that option. And it's just, I don't want that, right? It's not fun. So it's been tough. It's been tough being a parent under these conditions. And I feel for everybody else who's a parent, especially if you're stuck at home, right? And you have to put boundaries in. If you're not in an ideal situation where you don't have an office, like I don't have a personal office to hide to, it's tough. And I really feel for people, and I feel bad for the kids, especially the young ones. I mean, if they're school age now, you know, even in Ontario, they can still do the school stuff and e-learning and all this. But if you're in that awkward period between 0 and, you know, 3, it's very hard. Daycares are closing and all that. It's very difficult. And so I feel for parents that have kids in those ages, like what we are, because you're stuck in a limbo. And what do you do? And a lot rests on the parents, even with the e-learning. If you have kids that are in, you know, elementary school or high school, a lot of that learning is now being passed on to the parents to teach and help. So there's a lot being put on parents, and it's a strain. It's another stress on top of everything else that we have to deal with, you know, financial stress, losing jobs, reduced hours, etc. So it's been hard as a parent, and I feel for people. So I just wanted to give just to talk about it and give some solidarity out there to the parents and tell you, parents, you are doing a great job. Your kids are lucky to have you, and keep up the great work. We will continue to do well this year. Vaccines are rolling out. Things will get better. I'm sure of it. So with that, guys, I hope this maybe provided some help. Gets a bit of a rant, I guess you could say. And I hope all of you do well. And I'm hoping that we can get better together soon. So take care, guys, and stay well. I love you.